Good. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Joint Review Board meeting of August 13th, 2026. Mr. Brennan, would you please take the roll?
I would be happy to. Avoca School District.
Yes.
Cook County.
Here.
New Trier Township. Here. New Trier Township High School District.
Here.
Northfield Park District.
Here.
Northfield Township. Oakton Community College.
Here.
Our public member.
Here.
Sunset Ridge School District.
Here.
Village of Northfield is here. Winnetka Northfield Public Library District.
Here.
And then Winnetka Park District.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from July 15th, 2026. Have the members had a chance to review the minutes? Any questions or changes to the minutes? Do we do a roll call or can we do a voice vote?
Get a motion on the table.
Can we get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
So I heard a first from
James.
James and a second from Winnetka.
Shannon, yeah.
Thank you. Do you do a roll call or do you do a voice vote?
Voice vote's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Our next item is continued review of the Village Center Tax Increment Financing District Redevelopment Project Tax Area Financing, TIF Eligibility Study, Redevelopment Plan, Project, and TIF Ordinances. So I'd like to open this by asking the village if they have anything they would like to share to start the discussion.
If you don't mind, we'd like to follow up after your presentation.
Great. So as a follow-up to the last meeting, the school districts have some additional information to present. I would like to preface this again by saying we approach this in the spirit of collaboration and enter into this discussion with the utmost respect for Patrick and his staff and the village trustees and their desire to improve Northfield. So I'd like to invite Peter Tragos, Superintendent of New Trier, to start our presentation.
Just when needed.
Peter, I'm sure you brought handouts for everybody, so we'll just go paper.
We can do that. I've done it extemporaneous, but I'll wait till the screen comes on.
And it sounds like the projector is restarting.
Patrick, you could review our emergency preparedness plans here as the thunder comes down.
Yeah. Melissa, that was a wrong button.
Add the projector to the TIF.
This happens every once in a while, where somehow it's titled streaming, and she's trying to stream, it just doesn't play well. I don't know why. I think that's why.
Okay. Yep.
Goodness gracious. It's like a joke. I think it's broken. I'm gonna run it off of my laptop.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can all empathize with the technology not working the moment we need it, so no worries. Thank you to the Joint Review Board and to President Johnson for the introduction. And I'll begin talking about the first part of this presentation around the school district analysis and opportunities here, and share it with Joe Pilevsky, and then also we'll have James Eichmiller talk towards the end here. And to begin, it bears repeating that I've said here before, and to also echo what President Johnson said, is that we enter this with the greatest respect for the work you're all doing, and that we do in fact have shared goals, that we support Northfield's success. We have a shared interest in vital central business districts, not only in the village of Northfield, but throughout the other villages that serve New Trier Township as well. A rising tide raises all boats for us, so this is important for us to state, and that we agree on the problem and we disagree on the solution. It's been said here before, again, continues to bear repeating as we begin our work today, as we present some information around the TIF considerations that we're seeing and talking about today, and we'll share that a bit here. So I just want to go back to, its next slide here is, what we have seen and shared before is that the village has had some early wins, and those early wins have come from the success of the zoning changes. And today we'll present some of the information on the ways the TIF has, while it's had some zoning changes, has sparked some private investment and development. And we've seen this, of course, in the two developments right here north of Willow Road on Central Street. And both have started to been a positive start for the development of Northfield here. And today we will present some information on the ways the TIF, however, as a mechanism, will have a long-term negative consequences for the three school districts. It will impact all of the taxing bodies here, of course, represented in the JRB today. But the schools have a particularly vested interest in this, because 91% of our tax revenue, or our revenues in the school district, comes from local property taxes. And in that, would share a headline here, if you can all take a moment to see this. The headline here is really the significant financial impact on the school districts. Under the assumptions that Joe Pilevsky will discuss later, there are substantial funds diverted away from our schools. You can see how the impact, both on the low end and the high end, will impact the school districts in pretty substantial ways when these funds are diverted away from school districts over the life of the TIF. More information and specifics to follow on that today. The village's own plan says and acknowledges that school funding should be protected, but just as I noted and you saw on the previous slide, there is a substantial negative impact on schools through this. And we appreciate and concur with the principle stated in the Vision Plan 2040 and the principle that new developments will not adversely affect the schools. The village has stated, and they've stated here, that they intend to adhere to that commitment by reimbursing schools for the per pupil costs and the capital needs that may result as the outcome of new developments and increased enrollments. However, that reimbursement does not mitigate the long-term negative impact of lost property tax revenue, which is another essential part of the equation for us beyond simple capital needs or student enrollments. That long-term negative impact on the school districts as we rely on that property, generate new property and revenues generated from new property, and that TIF will divert that property revenues away from the district and to the village increment for the next 23 years. That shift here, that long-term shift away from that has effects that can't really be offset or not merely offset by merely reimbursing districts for per pupil costs or capital needs. And you can see here both, without a TIF and then with a TIF, what the impact here is, particularly as our reliance on generating revenues through this new property within the district. It's been noted here, and we've seen it in presentations before, the village has identified approximately $175 million in needs. But implementing a funding mechanism that could actually generate over 3 times what the revenue needed that have been identified here. Based on these projections, the ones you saw here and the ones you'll hear more about, a 23-year TIF may actually exceed the village's annual general fund revenue over that same time period. So the potential for this is greater and exceeds the needs identified and also has a long-term negative impact on the schools. For more specific information, I'm going to turn it over to Joe here and talk about that next.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Pielewski, and I'm just going to start by repeating a couple of summary slides that I presented during the last Joint Review Board meeting. The first slide is 3 selected municipal findings. These findings, A, B, and C, that are listed on the slide, are required to be findings made by the village board in order to establish a TIF district. And I'm going to hit the high points of these findings. Point A is that the redevelopment project area on a whole has not been subject to growth and development through investment by private enterprise. It would not reasonably be anticipated to be developed without the adoption of the redevelopment plan. B, the municipality must find that the redevelopment plan and project conform to the comprehensive plan for the development of the municipality as a whole. And C, if incremental revenues are being utilized, the redevelopment project area would not reasonably be developed without the use of such incremental revenues. We went through a long discussion last time as to our analysis of these 3 findings. What I'm going to go through briefly is just our summary and our position. Pielewski Financial found in summary that it does not recommend approval of the TIF district by this board, this Joint Review Board, or by the village board for the following reasons. Significant construction and proposed development are already occurring within the borders of the proposed TIF district. As you heard Peter mention, the 12-unit luxury condo building that's currently under construction, and the 92-unit luxury apartment building, which has been proposed and is currently working through the village processes. 2, commercial and industrial properties within the proposed TIF district have shown resilient EAV growth of 15% over the past 5 years. The Village of Northfield has competitive property tax rates compared to neighboring municipalities, which allows the Village of Northfield, a home rule community, to implement non-TIF financing of infrastructure improvements. The village may also address water and sewer improvements identified within the redevelopment plan, which I'll also use interchangeably with the TIF report, through the issuance of special service area bonds. Numerous non-TIF and financing programs exist, some of which were listed in the comprehensive plan, and some additional ones, such as long-term HUD, market rate HUD financing, Cook County Special Classifications 7B program, sales tax rebates, and some other items which were listed in my initial presentation. Numerous non-TIF incentive programs, in addition to those in the comprehensive plans, exist, which do not adversely impact taxing districts the way TIF does. Approving the proposed TIF district would adversely impact the funding of the school districts by diverting a majority of the estimated $175 million eligible TIF budget of incremental property taxes over 23 years. And lastly, the proposed TIF district's adverse impact on the school district funding, which Peter just went through, is inconsistent with the stated goals in Vision Plan 2040, which is the village's comprehensive plan. The $175 million eligible cost budget in the TIF report is an eligible cost budget, and which was made clear in a recent call that was scheduled with the village's TIF consultant, S.B. Friedman, Caitlin, myself, and some others. That is a TIF budget, but not a projection of which begs the question, what is the amount of total incremental taxes that will be generated if the Vision Plan 2040 is implemented within a TIF district? And for those of you that may not be completely familiar with the comprehensive plan, the village plan, Vision Plan 2040, they break down the central village area into 6 areas for development, okay? Area 1, which was described as an area that's likely to be developed in the short term based on a cooperative property tax owner for multifamily development. It's a little bit irregularly shaped, but expected to develop. Area 2 has been highlighted as being good for a hospitality use, like for hotel, for example. Area 3 is the former Mariano's site, which we're all familiar with. That was identified as being suitable for multifamily along with a grocery store. And then 4, 5, and 6 were multifamily mixed-use developments with retail commercial on the first floor. That's the Vision Plan 2040's view of that village center redevelopment area. And so what we assumed was that, let's assume that all of those sub-areas develop over a period of time, okay, in addition to the 12-unit condo building and the 92-unit proposed apartment building. We wanted to be really conservative. Anytime you're sort of making long-term projections, we wanted to be very conservative, intentionally so. And so we start with this top table, and I apologize, it's fairly small font. I'm going to hit some of the key points here. We used a 5-year average tax rate and equalization factor, which is pretty close to the current tax rate and equalization factor. We were looking at what was the current reassessment of the property, because not a lot of new development, other than the condo building and the proposed apartment building occurred between 24 and 25. So we said, okay, what does that look like in terms of annual growth in EAV? That grew by, the reassessment for the TIF district grew by over 11%. And so on an annual compounded growth rate of 3.66%, we said, let's assume a conservative 2.5% in our projections, and 4% as a more moderate expectation. The 92-unit proposed multifamily building in units per acre is at 41.2. And so that gives us a sense of density. And we said, well, what should we assume for all these sub-areas we just spoke of, areas 1, 4, 5, and 6 in particular? We reduced that just to be conservative. We don't think it's going to be this low density. In fact, since those sub-areas in the comprehensive plan are closer to the village center, we would expect it to be higher density, if anything. But nevertheless, to be conservative, we said, let's assume the units per acre are 35.6 for projection purposes, okay? And then we used some comps in the area to come up with an assessed value per square foot for multifamily and for retail as we looked for a new use, as we assume there's going to be a new user eventually for the former Mariano site. And then lastly, the cost of hotel construction, we assumed there'd be a hotel and perhaps with some type of meeting component. So we, based on experience, just put in a $40 million number that we felt was reasonable. Something like that, that's going to be sort of a gateway property coming in, we would expect to be at least that level of investment. And then as you see in the timing assumptions, which are critical in doing an incremental tax analysis, we assume that the 12-unit condo development and 92-unit luxury apartments would proceed in the normal process. And then for sub-areas 1, 2, 4, 5, and 1, 4, 5, and 6, which are multifamily, we assume that 1 would develop by the fourth quarter of '28, and then 4, 5, and 6 by 32, 33, and 34. Sub-area 2, the hotel, we think would take a little more time to develop, to attract a developer there. So we put that at 31. And then sub-area 3, which is the former Mariano site, we had heard a rumor that there's actually discussions that the village is having with a potential user. I don't know if that's true or not. So we said that that will be reoccupied by the third quarter of 2028. So I think, as you can see, we spread these developments over time. If the village identifies a larger developer who can do all of this at once or some of it at the same time, more incremental revenues would be generated. So we, again, attempted to be very conservative with regard to density, tax rate, equalization factor, growth, annual reassessment assumptions, and timing of the development. And as a result of that, in the bottom 2 boxes are the 2 conservative and the conservative and the moderate results of our projections. Using the 23-year TIF life through 2050 and the conservative projections, we came out with $253 million being generated in incremental revenues. And more moderate reassessment projections of 4% compounded every 3 years to reflect the triennial, $459 million. I wanted to also mention that this only takes into account the 12-unit condo building, the 92-unit proposed apartment building, and the sub-areas in the village's comprehensive plan. As you all know, looking at the proposed TIF boundaries, there are a lot of other properties that could develop. We assumed no development of those properties over the 23-year TIF life in these projections, okay? Which we didn't list that in our assumptions, but it is embedded in these projections. So the TIF-eligible redevelopment project cost budget of $175 million, we think will certainly be well-funded, overfunded. And the TIF report also anticipates the final 2049 EAV of $282 million. Our conservative estimate is $350 million, and our moderate estimate is $469 million in comparison. And again, I apologize for the small font here, but those 2 estimates, and the easy way to think about this is $250 to $500 million in incremental taxes. based on development of what's being proposed or under construction, plus redevelopment of the sub-areas in the comprehensive plan. 250 to 400 to approximately $500 million in incremental taxes. But it's important to note that in talking with what's relevant to most of the folks here, except perhaps less relevant to the home rule municipalities here, is how does this impact the non-home municipalities, the school districts, the park districts, the townships, the community college districts? We have to bifurcate, if you will, that incremental tax projection of 250 to nearly $500 million into reassessment and new construction. Because as Peter mentioned before, new construction is really the opportunity for non-home municipalities to capture some additional revenue beyond property tax caps. So we went and said, okay, let's take an extreme example and say that all of this occurs in the TIF district. How much revenue are non-home rule municipalities missing? Well, as you can see, perhaps if you have great eyesight, under the conservative estimate, it's $187 million based on just new construction, not reassessments. And under the moderate projection, $211 million of foregone revenue by the non-home rule entities. And to focus more precisely on the impact of new construction, we also zeroed in less on a projection and more on what we know today. What we know today is that the condo unit is being developed, 12 units of luxury condos, and a 92-unit apartment building is moving through a process at the Village. What is the impact of just those two in terms of lost revenue to non-home municipalities? Based on our conservative reassessments, $34.8 million over the TIF life, and the moderate, $39.7 million. Approximately $35 to $40 million, just from those two developments being within the TIF district. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James from Sunset Ridge for some final thoughts.
So you want maybe a slide advancer, Chad?
Oh, of course.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, and thank you. Again, I'm James Eichmiller, the superintendent of Sunset Ridge School District 29. And thank you to the Village for the opportunity, for allowing us to share this information. And to really echo what Dr. Trago said, I think the school districts come to this conversation, hoping to collaborate, hoping to bring people together for a better Northfield and for the betterment of all of our communities. So I really do come from that perspective. But to echo what Mr. Pilevsky said here, I think one of the questions that we've been asked is, does this impact schools? Stakeholders have been coming to myself and I think to my counterparts and saying, what is the impact of this TIF district on your schools? And I think this slide, while it's a complex topic, it involves tax caps, PTEL, new construction, and a lot of nuance about taxing. But the bottom line is these projections really show that just two properties that I think we can make a good faith argument that fail the but-for test, right? These are active developments, and I know in varying statuses, but they're in progress, and I think there's been some public comment that the TIF isn't needed for these two parcels, or for these two properties, for these two developments. So you have to look at it, and from my perspective, and from the school district perspective, representing District 29, and I think my counterparts from the other school districts would agree and say this is revenue that we are really entitled to, and this could really allow us to continue to fund our schools, to offer quality education, to potentially serve new students that could move in as a result of these developments. So, if you look at those numbers, they're pretty significant over the course of the 23 years. And really, this is how school districts get their raise beyond the consumer price index. And so the ability to lose that new construction raise would have a detrimental impact on school district budgets. And again, I won't speak for the other municipalities here, but you can see the financial impact on the other municipalities as well. So I think it's hard to argue there isn't an impact on schools as a result of new construction. So this next slide talks a little bit about fund balance. And again, this is an important nuance of school finance. A good way, a good way to think about fund balances, and I think Mr. Bierheid for this analogy, is that fund balances are like our savings account. And I think any responsible organization needs to maintain a healthy savings account. So you'll see up here the amount of money that these 3 school districts have in their fund balances and their savings accounts. And I'll make a note that the Sunset Ridge number, we're using FY27 projected budget numbers, and there's a reason for that. And again, I'm here doing my best to speak for the 3 school districts, but a specific District 29 nuance is that we have set aside fund balance as part of the overall funding plan to build a new school. The community, with 67% overwhelming support, we asked the community supported a referendum, and that's an approximately $40 million project. $23.5 million of that project will be paid for with referendum funds. Again, we asked the taxpayers supported it. Over the course of the past decade, under great leadership of the district, a fund balance is built up. And again, there's a lot of nuance to how the money is being used. And so I'll, in a very simplistic term, say that $11.5 million of our fund balance is being used as part of the overall funding plan to build Middle Fork School to help get us to that $40 million number. So again, there is a nuance. If you've seen a number shared of our fund balance, it is higher right now, but throughout the course of this fiscal year, we will spend it down. And so this number is the projected number for this school year. But that being said, in general, an important thing to understand about fund balances in school districts is, in general, we get paid twice a year. And you can see the number up there, about 90% of our revenue comes from local property taxes. So it's of the utmost importance that we maintain a fund balance to be able to operate, to be able to pay our staff, to make payroll, to be able to pay our bills, because those come a lot more often than twice a year. And as we've seen recently, we can't always count on, we can't always count on situations that we can't predict for. So if tax disbursements are late or delayed, like they were this year, that can have a significant impact on school districts. So for us to be good stewards of our taxpayers, to manage our organizations efficiently as school districts, we need to maintain a healthy fund balance to be able to make payroll, to be able to pay our bills, and to be able to fund our schools out of 12 months, 12 months out of the year. So again, fund balance is an important nuance of school business, but I believe that I think these 3 school districts have done an excellent job managing our fund balances and making sure we have the funds that are available. It's also an important metric in how schools are measured for their financial rating. It's also an important metric for credit rating. So when schools go out to borrow money, one of the things that's looked at is fund balance ratio. I think the question addressed here is, are there other alternatives? And I know Mr. Pilevsky did an excellent job outlining some of the other options. And again, this is not the area of expertise for any of the school districts, but I think the point here is that there are other options to help with the redevelopment plan. Another point that I'll echo is that the school districts support a strong Northfield, and we want to see active development, and we think there's a lot of potential that could benefit the entire community. We would just like to see, our request is that we continue to evaluate other options. Some of the options, like a special services area, is a way to target taxes directly to the area that benefits. Then on kind of the other side of that, right, if the concern is increasing taxes while you're trying to attack businesses, or while you're trying to attract new business, the other options that you have would be things like abatements, sales tax rebates. Again, I won't read all the slides, but there's other options that could allow those potential businesses to keep more of their money and to attract development. So there are other tools, there are other mechanisms out there. TIF is one solution, but there are many others. The benefit of more targeted solutions is there's a real alignment between the benefits and the taxpayer. If you look at all of the taxing bodies up at the dais here, this TIF will have a tax impact, for all of the residents of these taxing bodies that are outside of Northfield in the area that's benefited from that. And it is a common practice. TIFs are a common practice, and TIFs are a useful tool, but it's important to understand the hidden tax increase. And again, there's a lot of nuance to the way that tax cap districts work, and the way that the extension is going to be increased annually by CPI plus new construction. But that mechanism will represent a hidden tax increase for areas that are outside of the TIF. So we as a school districts believe that we should look at more targeted approaches that are more aligned with the properties and parcels that will benefit from the development. So in summary, kind of walking through some points here that we think are really important to consider as we evaluate this proposed TIF district. Zoning changes are really effective. I think it's a point we've heard, from the community. We've heard it several times. Zoning changes have already spurred some growth, and we're excited about that, and we're grateful for that. The slide that we had earlier on that's showing growth of those 92-unit and 12-unit developments, there's a lot of benefit to Northfield for that, and there's increased tax revenue. And so I think there are, zoning has shown that it's working and private investment is effective. There's existing growth, there's available alternatives, and if you really look at the Vision 2040 plan, or Vision Plan 2040, I think there's some eligibility concerns. And again, I just alluded to this point, but the cost shift of TIF really needs to be considered heavily, and who is bearing the cost of this TIF district. And then new property growth, again, it's the point we've emphasized considerably, but I think from a school district perspective, new property growth is an essential mechanism for us to keep up with our costs, and really one of the only ways that we can grow our revenues. And then finally, the scale of this is really significant. So it's a really significant growth, a really significant amount of growth and increment, and I think that needs to continue to be looked at and how that will impact the school districts and the other taxing bodies. So in summary, we are grateful for the partnership. We continue to partner with the village and meet with the village and try to find solutions that are beneficial for all. But at this point, we do not recommend the approval of the proposed TIF district. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the village have any comments to add?
No, but we have a presentation whenever you're ready.
Oh, sure. Do we have any questions? Sure, maybe we'll wait till the village's presentation, then we can have questions and discussion in totality.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So at the pleasure of the board, we've got excuse me, two options. One is we have representatives here from SB Friedman who can go back through and discuss eligibility findings that they had come up with for this analysis. I felt like we covered it pretty well last time, but I wanted to be prepared if it's something that you want to go back through this time. The other option is I have just a highlights set of slides to go through with our village position. So what's the pleasure of the board? And that'll help Melissa know which one to queue up. I saw some nods on just the village one.
Option 2 sounds good.
I'm fine with highlights.
Okay. So Melissa, if you queue up the village one, please. So I greatly appreciate the perspective of the taxing bodies here and also, and especially the school districts in talking about how the rising tide rises all ships and working together to make things happen. And, we've met recently to have a conversation about what adders could happen if a TIF does proceed to help the districts, and another meeting scheduled for next Tuesday to talk about that and try to figure out ways to help mitigate any impacts that may come up. Oh, so you're going to do this to me too, huh? It was funny when it happened to Peter. It's not so funny anymore. Thank you. So just to give kind of a highlight, the role, the purpose of the JRB is here on the screen, and I won't read these to you because at least the text is size. I think everybody in the room should be able to see it. The duties of the JRB are those first 3 bullet points, and then the last one is about forwarding a recommendation to the village board based on whether or not the information presented showed that the village is likely satisfying the eligibility criteria, meeting the objectives of the TIF Act, and the requirements set forth in redevelopment plan and project. So that's what we had presented in the last meeting, showing our evidence. But since that meeting had happened, we'd also gone through and we'd received some other information. So first bullet point, saying that we had gone through that. The second point is, after the last presentation, we submitted a memo to all members of the JRB indicating that here's why we feel that the information submitted either did or didn't meet with what the TIF Act requirements are. That memo was dated July 23rd, and I'll give just some highlights of that. But in a sense, that an assertion was that the village needed to exhaust all other funding opportunities before it considered TIF. That is not required by the TIF Act. It's an option, and the village board did go through a great many options, discuss them, pros, cons, and at the end, the discussion of the group was that the least impactful option to the taxpayers is pursuing TIF district. TIF distances are needed for widespread growth. This is what you hear a lot about, the but-for test. And I'll show you a graphic here in just a little bit that the redevelopment of one for sure and 3 other buildings, so a total of 4 out of 76 is not widespread active growth. It is a start, and we hope that we'll be able to get more going. But there's also an assertion that the redevelopment plan and program is not consistent with the comp plan. It is, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. But first, let me talk about the lack of growth. And I'll note here as we get started on the far right column for you, the tax year 24-25, the yellow bullet, these numbers are preliminary from Cook County, so they're not finalized yet, so they may vary a little as the county goes through and does their thing. But one of the things for the eligibility criteria we look at is, did the growth within the proposed TIF district lag or fall behind the remainder or the balance of the village in any 3 periods out of the past 5 periods? If you look at this, and when the report was put together, we only had 23-24 data. The 24-25 is coming out preliminary now. But you see there that it is lagging. And really, if you take the last 6-year period, it's lagging 4 out of 6 periods. That's a 19% lag over the overall growth of the village as a whole. That is not insignificant. And in my mind personally, this is a dramatic and very trackable number that shows people that area proposed within the TIF is lagging. It's falling behind and has been consistently, for the most part, for the past 6 years. Most notably in this last period, 24-25, where it fell by 9.3% compared to the rest of the village as a whole. That's real dollars. And remember what we talked about earlier about the rising of all ships. As the EAV of the village grows and we get new property on the record, that means everybody has to pay a little bit less of their share because there's more people paying into that fund. So that's why this is an important data point for looking at the but-for test and the lack of growth. Excuse me. And again, as I said, one new development and one in design doesn't indicate that there's widespread growth within the village. I believe it's highly likely this 92-unit development is going to proceed. They have their entitlements from the village, meaning things they needed for variations have all been approved. However, they don't own all the property yet. So they haven't bought all the property that's needed for this project, and they haven't submitted building permits yet, or plans. So it's not a sure thing, but the developers are pretty good developers. So I would say most likely it's going to happen. So here's the graphic. This is a boundary of the proposed TIF district from the redevelopment plan and program. So you see the 2 sections in red. One is under construction, that's the 12-unit condominium building. The second is the red building, and sorry, I may not have the shape quite right, but it is one that I say is likely to be built in the 92-unit. That is not widespread growth throughout the proposed district. That is why we feel that the assertion that the TIF area is booming, it doesn't need help, we do not believe that is true. Now on to the comp plan. What's been referenced is one sentence or one bullet point out of a subsection on community facilities, parks, and open space. And it's that last bullet point that says ensure that new residential developments do not adversely impact the capacity of school facilities or funding. That is one page taken out of a very detailed, comprehensive plan, but there's many other sections within that plan. And you see the desire for a vibrant downtown, growth in the business district, commercial objectives. Scattered throughout the plan in the commercial sections, there are a lot of data points indicating that this is something that the village has considered 6 years ago as growth and trying to make things and bring vitality to town. It hasn't happened. Think back to that slide I showed earlier with a table showing the last 6 years of data. It hasn't happened. there was a mention of the Best Hardware site, that was a willing owner. That owner's had that property listed for sale for at least 6 years since this plan was put together, on and off multiple times, and it hasn't sold. It didn't happen. So we're looking for ways to minimize the impact on property taxpayers, but spur some growth. Because the hope is if we can get that growth spurred, we can step back or scale back on the TIF because we will have gotten the engine started. And that's the goal, as I see it, of our village board. The majority of the board, they've been having these conversations. So I mentioned the plan presented by the school's consultant. And what you've got here on the left slide is the statements made in that presentation and our counter to those. So the first is saying that there hasn't been significant growth. As you saw on the slide, 2 of 26, it's less than 5% of the TIF area building-wise is growing right now. EAV growth is lagged by 19%. And the last point about the village having competitive property tax rates is true. However, that's not a criteria for a decision of the Joint Review Board of did the village meet its eligibility criteria. The second page of those summary of findings, the village could look at improving its infrastructure through a special service area. That is absolutely true. It's not a criteria of the TIF Act to consider. However, it's something the village did look at. And they said it's not a good thing because that special service area puts an additional property tax burden on an area that's already struggling. They didn't feel it was good for the owners within that area. Non-TIF setups are available. Again, not an eligibility criteria, but it's something the board worked their way through. It would adversely impact the funding of the schools by diverting property tax. The adverse, and this is where I want to be careful about how I word it because I do not do school district financials. I do village financials pretty well, but the adverse impact is, while not a criteria, is something that I think we all should consider and something I know the village board is very keenly aware of and paying attention to. The new property tax growth that is of concern is in the ballpark of 5%, 0.5%, so 0.5% for Avoca and Sunset Ridge on a 10-year average. For New Trier, it's about 0.75, so 0.25% of the overall property tax growth. That money will still come. The base tax levy still comes, and the new property tax levy still comes. What changes is that new property growth from within the proposed TIF district doesn't come. It gets put into a fund for reinvestment in the area. So how much is that? We won't know until something happens, until there's growth in the area. But the good news is the school districts have been doing very well financially, as you saw by their slides, managing their funds, your taxpayer funds, very well, because they've been able to get a surplus that can cover things like delays in property tax payments. It's smart, sound financial action. But they've been doing that with very little, if any, growth within the proposed TIF district. How can we say that? Look back to that slide about how much change has happened within the proposed TIF district over the last 5-6 years. There hasn't been a lot of significant growth. So that's why we don't see a strong adverse impact. However, we are working on building things into this, should the board proceed, to ensure that should it happen, we're best positioned to be able to help out as much as possible. And you see the last point there about there's many impacts to spurring growth within the comp plan. So again, I really appreciate the approach on this. The purpose of the JRB is to bring all these taxing districts together, to give information to the village board and points to consider. And I know they're paying attention. There's several here and probably more watching remotely online. The village board and I understand there's concerns. That's why we've put out letters saying here's some potential additions through an intergovernmental agreement or through the ordinances enabling a TIF that we would like to build in to work on that. We've been talking with the school districts on that. We will continue those discussions. The Park District discussions, there was a miscommunication. I was waiting on a response and they were waiting on us. We'll get that restarted. I apologize for that miscommunication. But the important point is the village board has expressed their strong desire to find a way to minimize the impacts. The TIF Act already has tools built within it because the state legislature has recognized that there can be impacts. So there's tools there, but we're trying to go above and beyond because the village board cares about what happens to school districts, just as everybody in this room does. Fundamentally, the school boards, the library, the park districts, every taxing body in here has a duty to do what they think is best for their district, their area. But the village board has a duty to do what they feel is best for the overall village board. And that's why information like this is super helpful, is they take in the data to try to determine what they think is best. So based on all this information, it's our belief that the village has demonstrated its eligibility under the TIF Act, and we ask for a positive recommendation from the Joint Review Board. Thank you.
Patrick, thank you for the thoughtful presentation. With the board's permission, I think it would make sense now to move to public comment and then have a more unified discussion under the next agenda item. Is that, everyone okay with that? So now we'll move to public comment. Is anyone interested in addressing the board? As a reminder, we're following the village's rules for public comments, so we'll have 3 minutes per person. And Melissa, do you keep the time typically on that, or should I? Do you mind? Thank you. And yeah, just. and as a reminder, we thank all the members of the public interested to speak
Okay, we're
today
going
and
to double
address the
team you
board.
here.
And-
Mary Lindblad, 821 North Hap Road. And,
Carol Ritchell, 811 Hap.
I'm just here to explain that the white-shirted, ball-capped people are here to represent the more than 1,000 people who have signed a petition urging the board to slow down. And if nothing else, what I've heard today, the different perspectives and a whole bunch of numbers that, of course, in a setting like this are impossible to absorb. And also in line of recent news that I've heard about failed TIFs in the area, I think it is more than necessary that we slow down and really consider all these options and make sure we're doing the right thing. Because right now, I'm not clear exactly what they're going to do to my village. So I think slowing down and making sure, crunching all these numbers and making sure we've got the right numbers is a good idea.
Thank you. Okay, so she referred to a petition which is called the Northfield TIF Transparency and Referendum Petition. At this moment, we have at least 1,012 signatures. And I guess, please pay attention. Pay attention to what people are saying about this. And if anybody else is interested in signing this, it would be wonderful. Thank you all very much. You okay?
Thank you. Anyone else interested in making a comment? I see someone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tom O'Donoghue, Jr., 81 East Canterbury Lane, 61 East Canterbury Lane. Resident since 2003, financial restructuring and turnaround person. Things I would like to have everybody remember that were said through, some key words: fiduciary duty. I listened to Patrick's voice about the fiduciary duty for the village. As a turnaround restructuring person, it's interesting. I view that the parcel set aside for the TIF has multiple parties who have an interest in it. And similarly, in a commercial standpoint, we always worry about people over-leveraging a site in the hopes of creating value in the future. It is, for those of you who are commercial, you know that it's easy to borrow, it's harder to pay it back. I understand TIFs are not necessarily automatic in terms of what funds will be generated. But what I am concerned about is that whatever funds are generated, leaving it up to the village to decide who the winners and losers are as opposed to the marketplace, is my concern. We will be setting aside a large section of the village for a group of individuals to decide who the winners and losers are from a market standpoint, as opposed to letting the market. I like the fact that the village did redistrict or rezone certain areas and make it more appealing for people to make investments. And the fact that we as a village have lower acquisition costs, perhaps, of some of those properties will also help developers. So I said it at the prior meeting, I'm more concerned about how this ordinance is written. It's written in an open-ended, leave it to the village to figure it out, and also, too, from a time standpoint. We are in 2026. COVID interfered. That process of that board who put together that vision started in 2015. It didn't get published till 2020. A lot of things have changed in the last 10 years. And perhaps the vision needs to be reassessed. That's all my comment is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
Avi Messinger, President, CEO, UW. Good afternoon, Board and the community. I'm here today because I believe the Village of Northfield has an important decision to make about the future of our community and specifically about how we treat the businesses that have already invested here in Northfield. I know and I want to believe the Village of Northfield and this Board want to see a strong, vibrant, and successful business community. I also believe that means looking beyond the immediate benefits of a proposed development and considering the long-term impact that development may have on the businesses that are already here. UW, as well as many others, are one of those businesses. We're not a business that's considering whether we want to invest in Northfield. We've already made that decision. We've invested our money, our time, our employees, our personal commitment to this community. We've chosen Northfield because we believe in Northfield. UW is more than a restaurant. We're part of the community. We currently sponsor many sports teams, schools. We employ members of the community and serve Northfield residents and families every day. We have worked to build relationships with our customers, with the organizations that make this community special. Those contributions matter. Our business is not alone. Northfield has many established businesses that have made the same type of commitment to Northfield. Those businesses employ local residents, they pay taxes, they support the schools and organizations, they sponsor community activities, and provide services that residents rely upon. These businesses are part of what makes Northfield Northfield. When considering a new development, I believe the village and the village board should ask an important question. What impact will this development have on the businesses that have already invested in our community? Development should not be viewed only in terms of what's new. We should also consider what we've already done and what could potentially be lost. A new development may bring in new buildings and new businesses, but established businesses bring something that cannot be created overnight: relationships, history, community involvement, customer loyalty, and years of investment. If we make it difficult for existing businesses to survive, compete, or grow, we risk weakening the very business community that makes Northfield attractive in the first place. As a business owner, I'm not opposed to growth, and many of my colleagues are not either. I'm opposed to growth that does not adequately consider its consequences. There needs to be a balance. Northfield should absolutely think about its future, but its future should not include the businesses that are already here. We should be asking how we can preserve existing businesses, encourage them to reinvest in the community, and allow them to grow responsibly and make sure that they have a fair opportunity to succeed in the community. UW, as well as our colleagues, want to continue investing in Northfield. We want to continue supporting local schools and school teams. We want to continue sponsoring various youth organizations. We want to continue creating jobs and serving the residents of the community. But we need a village and a village board that recognizes the existing businesses are an important part of this community. I respectfully ask this board to look carefully at the proposed development, not only from the perspective of what it may add to Northfield, but also the perspective of what it could take away from the businesses and the community and family relationships that already exist.
Thank you. We're just hitting 3 minutes, if you could please.
I'm almost done.
Thank you.
Please consider the investment that existing businesses have made. Consider the employees who depend on those businesses. Consider the schools, the teams, and the families. And most importantly, consider whether this particular development strengthens the Northfield community as a whole that we've worked so hard to build, or whether it risks undermining it. I believe Northfield can grow without sacrificing the businesses as a whole, without jeopardizing the investment we've made here in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good afternoon. Ariel Hofer, resident at 1554 Willow and business owner at 300 Hap Road. I have 3 points I would like to make today. The first is that today is the first time I'm wearing an anti-TIF hat and taking a formal stand against the TIF. This is because of the outstanding amount of unanswered questions I have posed. Without answers to these questions, I must come out against the TIF strongly. Second point I would like to make is about the vibrancy of our downtown. While thinking about the TIF, I started compiling all of our current businesses and was astounded by the ground we cover and how truly unique we are. In restaurants, we have a diner, a sit-down restaurant at the Hap Inn, a tavern, a pizza place, a taco spot, a hot dog joint, a sushi restaurant, and a bakery with incredible sandwiches. In retail, we have a really unique shop with Peachtree Place, a coveted shoe store, a beautiful boutique, a toy store unlike any other, a needlepoint store, a bespoke eyeglass store, just to name a few. Plus our butcher shop, which has become the town's grocer in lieu of Mariano's. Retail margins are shrinking every single day. I don't believe any of us can survive if the developers are being put in a place where they're given the money and we're taken out. This brings me to my last point. Today you are being asked if the TIF area meets the criteria for a TIF. I implore you to vote no, because it does not meet the very important criteria of, if not for a TIF, there would be little to no development. This is a statement that could be easily disproven by looking at what developers are promoting in social channels and public forums. They're spending money on renderings and properties. Make no mistake, development is here. Please vote no as your recommendation today. Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
Sorry. Kaya Rubenstein, 315 Linder Avenue. I'm sorry, I did not want to come up here and speak again. I am always speaking, and I will say my usual. We are a small village, 3.23 square miles. And as right now, our population is 5,604. Overdevelopment equals underservice. It's been shown, and I really would urge, I'm not a social media person by any means, but I would urge people to look at, if you haven't, and read Nextdoor for all of the comments, so many people commenting, and so many factual items stated. A lawyer in Glenview, who is familiar with the Glenview TIF process, wrote a 25-paragraph tome on what the TIF was in Glenview, which is much bigger than Northfield, of course, by the way, and how it adversely affected the schools and adversely affected the suburb in other ways. And that the Glenview plan is very much like what Northfield has. And Northfield is so much smaller. He recommended that a TIF not be done and said more on that. But I will refer you, this will be too late for your vote, but I would urge you to read this in Nextdoor, get on Nextdoor. I do not like social media, as I said, but he had very good points as to why not. And not just the schools, too. Again, overdevelopment, we believe, leads to underservice. Thank you so much.
See one more? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Madonna Tiedemann, and I live at 263 Riverside Drive. So perhaps you're going to say, well, some of these things have already been addressed, but I think it's worth repeating or reviewing. I want to be very clear about what this vote is today, what it actually is and what it's not. Today, it's not a survey of personal preferences. It is not about whether you personally favor the idea of TIF or whether you might think your particular governing body might eventually negotiate a side deal or a benefit or a capital project such as a library out of it. Your sole statutory mandate as a representative of this joint review board is to judge whether the village's proposal has met the legal burden of proof provided and required by Illinois law. That means the legal burden of proof is 100% on the village to produce substantial evidence establishing both statutory blight and, most importantly, the but-for requirement, proving that development cannot happen without normal market forces, without a TIF. If there is reasonable doubt that the village has met its burden of proof, it is your statutory duty to vote no. The factual record shows the village has simply failed to meet its burden. First, regarding the market viability of the investment in downtown Northfield, at the Village Planning and Zoning meeting on May 12th, REVA Development Partners was specifically asked if their proposed 92-unit residential property was dependent on a TIF. On the record, REVA stated they would proceed with or without a TIF. When the primary developer in the zone confirms their project would happen with or without a TIF, the but-for argument fails. Second, on alternative mechanisms, when asked about using a targeted Cook County Class 7B commercial incentive for the vacant Mariano site at the August 4th Village Caucus meeting, Village Board President Tracy Mendrake cited factually incorrect information and was seemingly unaware of how a Class 7B actually works. This reveals that the village has failed to thoroughly evaluate existing partial specific alternatives. Under Illinois law, if vitalization can be achieved using alternative financial tools short of the TIF, then the TIF is unnecessary, further shattering the statutory but-for requirement. When the statutory requirements are not supported by substantial evidence and when viable alternatives exist, your legal imperative as a member of this board is clear. You must reject this proposal and vote no. Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
My name is John Levine. I live at 1875 Old Willow Road in the Middle Fork Woods. I'm board president. Just echoing what people have said on either side of the issue, there's been a lot of terrific work done, a lot of people who know a lot more than I do on both sides that have presented. I just wanted to echo a few things that I have heard, particularly the last woman who said so eloquently. There's evidence that TIFs have a high failure rate. I would hope that there has been some review of experience, particularly locally, that can inform this board's decision. I'm also concerned as a taxpayer that the revenue from increased assessed values occurs far in the future and the costs are borne in the near term. The needs of the taxing bodies go up. Our tax rates outside the TIF are going to go up well before any revenue has occurred. And finally, I'm concerned when figures are thrown out about 23-year projections, $282 million, not knowing where that comes from. And has there been been any consideration to what happens should that revenue or that increase in assessed value not materialize, of course, related to my concern about the failure rate of TIFs in general. Thank you.
Anyone else interested in making a public comment today? Okay, if there are no other public comments, we'll move on to our next agenda item. And the next agenda item is Joint Review Board discussion and recommendations. Our purpose here today is to make a recommendation to the village board. The recommendation is based on each of our own taxing bodies' assessments of the criteria summarized by Patrick, including whether it meets the but-for test. We know that we may not each see this the same way, and that's okay. I would like to provide an opportunity for the JRB members to discuss this topic now with questions for the village or the school district consultants. After the discussion is complete, we will then conduct a vote of the JRB. Are there any members who would like to start the discussion?
Yes, I have some remarks. All right, thank you very much. My name is Charlie Pick. I'm the public member of the JRB. I wanted to try and bring this discussion kind of down to ground level in terms of sharing my thought process to arrive at a voting position at the end of the meeting. I hope the comments I make are helpful to the JRB and to the public at large. So I've been very visible and vocal during this entire TIF process, and I've had many conversations with business owners and residents about this issue. None of my posts has been anonymous, and I'm not hard to find. Of the many people who've engaged with me over the past few months, not one has been supportive of the TIF, either in its scope or its process, or both. By way of background briefly, I have an MBA from Kellogg. I've been a licensed real estate broker and an investor and developer for 25 years, and I own a property, commercial property inside the TIF. I'd like to cover three topics briefly today. One, whether the TIF area as mapped meets the statutory eligibility requirements, the Mariano's property, kind of from a real estate perspective, and the proposed redevelopment plan. So it's a hard no for me on whether the TIF area as defined meets the statutory requirements. In a memo from Patrick Brennan dated July 23rd, as he alluded to in his presentation, the TIF Act requires the JRB to consider whether the TIF district would reasonably develop absent approval of TIF. The terms widespread and significant are not in that language with respect to development. So Central Avenue, which is something like a third of the proposed TIF area, just a year after rezoning, is in fact developing at a blistering pace, an estimated $50 million in new developments in just 4 properties at 405 Central and 470 Central. There are literally buildings coming out of the ground. The 92 units at 470 Central, which has been entitled by the village but not yet permitted, it was delayed by 6 months because the developer expanded the project scope from 62 units in 92 units. And I agree with Mr. Brennan that this project is highly likely to get built. And the developer has stated that they don't need any public subsidies. So looking at Central, my thought process is, what kind of mental gymnastics do I have to do to not call $50 million, and that's an estimate, it could be 40, it could be 60. What do I have to do in my head to not call that actual development in an area where there's been no new construction to my knowledge since 1997? That's equal to 25 $2 million single-family homes. Does it matter that these projects are very dense and vertical and only include 4 parcels? If that were spread over 25 different TIF parcels, would that change reality? I don't think so. I mean, development is development. So I'm not going to, as an elected official, say that Central Avenue would not reasonably be expected to develop without a TIF when it's developing before our very eyes today. The TIF area map is the map. It was proposed by S.B. Friedman, and it's the only map that this body can vote on today. There is no alternative. The map is the map. So as I see it, this board has 2 choices. 1, reject the map as drawn, or 2, discuss a change to the map to exclude Central Avenue, and then have a healthy debate on development prospects for the remaining properties on that map. The JRB should be aware that other Central Avenue properties have recently changed hands, and others are in play. I was approached on my property after rezoning, but before the TIF proposal became public, and it just wasn't the right time for me. Considering that only 6 or 7 functionally obsolete properties will be left after these first 2 known projects are built, there is no other reasonable conclusion, for me anyway, that Central is developing and will continue to do so without taxpayer subsidy. In the North Shore, high-density residential zoning drives demand for development. This is true in Wilmette, Northbrook, Winnetka, and now Northfield. None of these areas has TIF. Here's a good case study to consider. Kenilworth. 7 years ago, under Mr. Brennan's watch as village manager, a TIF was created in Kenilworth along Green Bay Road amid a great deal of controversy. Can anybody tell me how many new construction projects, to my knowledge, have been built over the 7 years? I believe the answer is 0. There have been a few rehabs, but nothing new. And in my mind, this is because of the zoning. You have New Trier schools, Lake Michigan close by, the Metra train stop, and a ton of wealth in this area. Developers want large, dense projects, and Kenilworth zoning doesn't deliver that. Let's talk about Mariano's for a minute. So Mariano's has been the centerpiece of the village TIF from day one. And I understand that. The village says, you know, this is a very significant revenue source in terms of sales tax, and it's highly visible, and it's kind of like the core of our retail center. But I will say the village has kind of fomented some fear and panic that the Mariano's will stay vacant and weed-filled forever without a taxpayer, handout. So let me see if I can offer some perspective on how real estate investment actually works and just create maybe a more balanced discussion for this board. Filling on this, and mind you, I have not spoken directly with the property owner Swanson. These are my opinions alone. Filling a 48,000 square foot grocery store vacancy is really, really hard. This is a very large building that sits less than 3 miles from no fewer than 7 of the largest grocery store chains in the world, and I'm not making that up. Mariano's, which is Kroger's, Target, Costco, Aldi, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and Jewel, which is Albertsons, plus Fresh Market and other local grocers. So the short list of potential tenants is extremely short. And it's unfortunate, but it's not surprising that Sunset couldn't make it work. But there is no need to panic. The most recent leasing prospect, per the village, will divide the building into a grocery and a liquor store. It makes a lot of sense. 48,000 square feet is too big for a single grocer, given the competition. Vacancies happen. The bigger they are, the harder they are to fill. So, next question. Does Swanson need TIF money to demise the space, to get this done? Well, I think it's unlikely. I'm not surprised that he's asking for it because frankly, I would too as a developer. In 2023, when they bought this property, there was no TIF. Buying retail, especially with this horribly competitive landscape, comes with vacancy risk. That's the nature of the business. And you don't invest expecting taxpayer assistance to re-tenant the building. That's just not the business that we're in. Now, would Swanson let this investment rot until they get, public assistance? I don't think that's very likely, honestly, especially with a $7.5 million loan coming due in 2030, which is public information, by the way. When you pay $13 million for a property, which suggests a very low cap rate, which is a metric of cost, you deal with the vacancy risk and you do whatever it takes to get cash flowing again. The other note I wanted to make about this property, the 7B program is something that was kind of glossed over in the village TIF presentation as not being applicable to the TIF as proposed because it doesn't apply to multifamily or office properties. This is true. It does not. However, it's an absolute bullseye for a retail property like Mariano's. 7B was created exclusively for key commercial retail properties that are vacant for more than a year. These are, and especially for properties that are essential for the area in which they are located and require more than $2 million to rehab. This fits the bill. The result is an 80 to 90% reduction in taxes over 12 years, which is serious money on a $700,000 annual tax bill. So the village might not like 7B as much as TIF because all of the 7B money, the savings, go directly to the property owner. They don't go to the village. So it makes sense that the village would prefer the TIF. I don't confess to be a 7B expert, and there's other 7B hurdles that have to be met, but to gloss over this possibility without further analysis and discussion, to me, it doesn't make sense. So two last comments, and thank you for indulging me for a couple more minutes. The redevelopment plan as proposed is the other document that we're charged with voting on today. It's a no vote for me on this as well. In an August 4th meeting between village representatives and a cross-section of small businesses in Northfield, the village asked the origin of the $175 million budget in the redevelopment plan. President Mendrick stated that this figure assumed development of virtually all of the parcels in the TIF, which he then admitted that that was probably unlikely. It's fair enough, and I agree with that. But since the $175 million number is therefore largely irrelevant, and given the lack of any other detailed budgets, projections, plans, spreadsheets, I don't see how the JRB can vote yes on the plan as drafted, because that's all we have is what we're given. So I certainly cannot. So thank you very much for indulging me, and I would love to hear from others on this issue.
Other comments or questions from JRB board members?
The housing development for schools, are these intended to be housing for seniors or more children coming, school-age children coming to these schools, both at the condo and the rental, I believe, developments? If you could just elaborate what sort of housing I was envisioning for those. Thank you.
Sure. There are a couple pieces. One is there's been discussion about the new 12-unit, they're calling it a luxury condominium building. The developers indicate that they do not believe that that will generate student growth because of the luxury basis of the building. The next is a 92-unit development. That building is currently planned as apartments, the last we heard from the developer. They're looking at projections for what that could be on student growth, but they likewise feel that their level of rent that they're looking and the size of the apartments are unlikely to have much student growth generation. The TIF Act does have a couple of things there that helps reimburse the districts if TIF funds are used for the development. One is per student reimbursement based on the amount of money increment that comes from that development that was funded. The second is the village has access potentially to surplus at points that can help roll those funds back. Beyond that, different areas of town, the sub-area plans for the comprehensive plan were shown. So it really depends on what sub-area you're talking about. The Northfield Road area, that is set up in a way that close to the senior center, the thought of the discussion was, would that be something that would be attractive as a senior housing area? Other areas, the Central Avenue corridor may be housed differently. The trick for the village is that it's not the village's decision on how that's done unless the developer is asking for either funding from the village or variations. And that's where we can kind of get involved on how they have their housing mixes.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Gail Eisenberg from New Trier Township. To follow up on Supervisor Mosensada's question about the housing, I noted in the initial report that housing was going to be one of the goals of the TIF. And as you mentioned, unless a developer needs the village's approval, you might not have as much control. Can the TIF be used to encourage affordable housing, in particular given the Northfield affordable housing plan seeking to move from 6% to 10% affordable housing stock? And can that be codified in any TIF plan?
Depending on the type of incentive requested, yes, it can help with affordable housing. There's some specific requirements of the TIF Act for how funds are used and what their eligible expenses are. And then codifying it in the ordinance is something I haven't discussed with the village board. And I don't know off the top of my head if that's something that would go in the TIF ordinances or something being done in the village code for any new developments over X units we consider. If I remember correctly, Highland Park is something like that. If it's over 12-unit development, then it must have an X% of new housing, or excuse me, affordable housing.
Thank you.
Other comments, James?
Yeah, thank you. Just on the question of schools, I think I appreciate you bringing that up and the student impact. I mean, quickly looked up the news article that I think was circulated, and I think it has, if I'm reading correctly, 49 two-bedroom, 24 two-bedroom plus den units, and 12 three-bedroom units. So I am not a real estate development expert, and I know, but I do think something the schools would be very much interested in would be some projections from the developer to understand the impact. But in my experience, when you start to see three-bedroom units, you'll see families move in. And I think when you see two-bedroom plus den, and even some two bedrooms, you'll start to see families move in, especially because this is such an attractive community with obviously outstanding school districts in District 37, District 29, New Trier Township High School District. So, again, I don't want to, I can't obviously make predictions or make expert projections, but knowing the available multi-unit housing, I think it's a concern for the school districts when we consider how many students and families might move in. And when I say concern, we're glad to educate any student that lives within our boundaries, but obviously the cost implications and the capital potential, the potential need for capital improvement in relation to that new enrollment. So, thank you.
Further comments or questions from the JRB? Patrick, is the village? Anything else to add?
Thank you, no.
No, I'll make a few comments then on behalf of New Trier. On New Trier Township High School's perspective, we have concerns moving forward with the TIF. Overall, we believe it does not meet the but-for test. And further, the zoning changes the village has implemented have been successful, and with more time may yield even more significant results. And we view this as really a $500 million potential tax hike, with revenue equal to the village general fund over the same time period. New Trier in 2014 went to referendum to pass an $89 million tax hike. So this is a significant raising of revenue without approval of all the voters. So that's New Trier's perspective, although presented with the utmost respect for the village, the work they're doing, and the work they want to do to continue to ensure a vibrant Northfield. If there are no other comments or questions, Mr. Brennan, can you please call the vote?
I don't have a motion on the table yet.
We have a motion to, do we need a motion to? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the village's, would it be to approve the village? Yeah.
So it'd be a motion to recommend approval of the redevelopment plan and creation of the TIF district.
Do we have a motion to approve the redevelopment plan and the creation of a TIF district?
Can I make that motion?
I think, yeah.
Yep. Motion, so moved.
Do we have a second? We have heard a second? So we have a second? And let's do a vote now.
Avoca School District.
No.
Cook County.
Abstain.
New Trier Township. New Trier Township High School District.
No.
Northfield Park District.
Abstain.
Northfield Township.
Abstain.
Ocean Community College.
Abstain.
Public Meadow.
No.
Sunset Ridge School District.
No.
Village of Northfield is a yes. Winnetka Northfield Public Library District.
Yes.
Winnetka Park District.
No.
We have 2 yeses, 4 noes. The motion does not carry.
Motion does not pass. Is there any other?
So the motion to recommend approval has failed. If the board would like to make a recommendation for another motion, it could, including recommending denial. That would also be acceptable.
Do we have a motion to recommend denial, the redevelopment plan and the TIF recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll,
Hold on just 1 second, please. Second, motion was made by public.
Mr.
Sorry,
Kennedy?
it's still taking me a while to learn everybody's voices. And second by James.
Could we please have a vote?
Absolutely.
What was the motion?
Right.
The motion was to recommend disapproval of the redevelopment act in the TIF district.
So a yes motion is a motion to recommend denial, or a yes vote, excuse me. Avoca School District.
Yes.
Cook County.
Oh, it was 5? Yeah.
Cook County.
Abstain.
New Trier Township.
Abstain.
New Trier Township High School District.
Yes.
Northfield Park District.
Abstain.
Northfield Township.
Abstain.
Ocean Community College.
Abstain.
Public member.
Yes.
Sunset Ridge School District.
Yes.
Elizabeth Northfield is in that. Winnetka Northfield Public Library.
No.
And Winnetka Park District.
Abstain.
And just for clarification, the last vote, sorry, as I was going through, I added up, it was 5 no's on the last to approve, but that is also did not carry. You need 7 votes.
Five out of the, how many members were voting?
5 out of 12. So you need 7 in one position to carry.
That's correct. It requires a majority vote of the members present. So there are 12 members present. In order to pass a motion, we need 7 votes in the affirmative.
Are we sure it's not present and voting?
It's present in voting, but abstention for legal purposes counts as casting a vote, and the statute requires an affirmative vote to make a recommendation.
Thank you.
Can we, I think does the school district attorney concur with the village attorney on that interpretation?
I think that's right, yeah.
Okay. So we have, on the first motion, we had
5 yeses.
5 yeses,
I'm sorry, 5 no's.
5 no's.
5 no's.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, we had 5 no's. And then we had, go on, and we had 2 yeses?
Correct. Yes.
Correct, yeah.
And then how many, and we had 5 abstain? Okay, and then on the second vote, how many do we have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 4 yeses.
Okay,
2 no's.
2 no.
6 abstain.
6 abstain. So from a procedural standpoint, the JRB needs to make a recommendation, and so if we don't have a majority on either.
Correct. So procedurally, the JRB has 30 days to make a recommendation from the date of the first JRB meeting, which was July 15th. If the JRB fails to make a recommendation during that 30-day window, then the presumption is that the JRB supports the TIF proposal. So the board is free to entertain additional motions in order to try to get to a majority, but failure to get to a majority.
Right, you guys asked for a positive recommendation, that failed. So that's where it stands, there's no positive recommendation. I see it as, it goes into a 30-day deliberative process where the village goes, talks to all the taxing bodies. Then at the end of that, if the board wants to move forward, that's its business. But that's what I see, it's a 30-day deliberative process.
Yeah, so without a majority of those present voting, there's no recommendation. You have to get whether it's positive.
Right, but if you guys ask for a positive recommendation, that's what is needed from the JRB. There's no positive recommendation. So there may not be a negative, but there's no positive.
There's no recommendation. If they recommend denial, that's what starts the 30-day deliberative process.
Right, so I mean, here's what I've got. A board's recommendation shall be an advisory member. The recommendation shall be a majority of those members present and voting shall be submitted to the municipality within 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, can we entertain a motion to recess?
Motion to recess?
There's no recommendation shall
Yes.
be adopted by the majority of those.
All in favor? Aye. We're in recess for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 3:50.
Yeah, but in order to have positive.
Do you guys want to chat?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's talk.
When you're absentee,
I'd like to recall the Joint Review Board meeting. And I do want to note that I believe one member had to leave, so we will have 11 members for the duration of the meeting. I'd like our attorneys, village attorney, school district attorney, had a chance to talk, and I'd like village attorney to summarize the conversation.
Absolutely. So just to clarify for the board, in order to make a recommendation on the TIF proposal, it requires a majority vote of the members present. There were, until recently, 12 members present. Now there are 11. So it requires 6 votes to either support or recommend rejection of the TIF, regardless of what the substance is. In this case, an abstention does not count as an affirmative vote. So you have effectively eliminated, if you abstained, eliminated yourself from voting yes or no, but it doesn't change the vote requirement of 6. As we discussed with the chair a little bit earlier, there's nothing preventing the board from making additional motions. They could take another pass at a motion that had already been presented and failed, or entertaining alternate motions as well. Be happy to answer any questions the board has.
So just to be clear, if we cannot reach a consensus today, this is deemed approval by the Joint Review Board?
That's correct. If the board cannot reach a majority vote to either recommend approval or recommend denial of the TIF plan, then the Act provides that that is consent from the JRB for the TIF to move forward.
Okay, with that, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
James?
I'd like to make a motion to deny the TIF district.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Who was that second? Mr. Pick? Mr. Brennan, please call the vote.
Wait, can I get clarification? He said to deny the TIF.
To deny.
So a yes vote in this case would be to deny.
Okay.
It does get confusing.
Last
I
time
know.
we did, yeah.
We did reverse, yes.
And could you clarify what an abstention would mean, or a present vote would mean?
Correct. An abstention vote or a present vote would be effectively a no vote. So it would not go with the majority in this case.
Ready?
Yes, ready.
Avoca School District.
Yes.
Cook County.
Abstain.
Nutria Township is out, sorry. Nutria Township High School District.
Yes.
Northfield Park District.
Abstain.
Northfield Township.
Yes.
Oakton Community College.
Yes.
Public member.
Yes.
Sunset Ridge School District.
Yes.
Village of Northfield is a no. Winnetka Northfield Public Library District.
No.
And Winnetka Park District.
Abstain.
I have 6 yeses, which is what you need for the motion to carry, if I heard things correctly.
Correct.
2 noes and the remaining abstain.
Motion passes. Any additional motions?
Just one more point of clarification, Mr. Chair. It's common in these cases for the JRB to provide some sort of written justification for their recommendation. That can come in several different forms. One could be the minutes from the meeting today. Alternately, I know the school districts, or at least one of them, had engaged a consultant to outline reasons why the districts didn't support the TIF creation proposal. But if the board would like to entertain a motion to adopt either the minutes or that report as the basis for their recommendation, that would help provide clear communication to the village board as to the reasons why the JRB is recommending denial.
And I would recommend, the chair would recommend that we use the minutes for this purpose. Can we have a motion to that effect?
So I can help with the motion. A motion to adopt the minutes from today's meeting as the written report providing justification for the JRB's recommendation.
Would anyone like to make that motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any additional business before the Joint Review Board?
May I make a comment?
And I'm sorry, the minutes, from a legal perspective.
I can help, yeah. So the minutes will be approved at the next, if there is a next meeting of the JRB, the minutes would be approved at that point in time. So the draft minutes would be provided to the village board as the basis for the recommendation. You're welcome.
Yes, question, comment?
Just a comment. I apologize, I forgot to introduce myself when I last spoke. Shiva Mohsenzadeh, Northfield Township Supervisor. I just wanted to comment that I support the village's position in wanting to redevelop downtown and revitalize it. I understand the school's position, and I support those Northfield Township residents, part of the Northfield residents who live in Northfield Township, and their views on this. And I just hope that the village kind of goes back and redraws things and we get a general consensus that I would be able to support. But I appreciate everyone's work on this. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a couple of things. One, a observatory comment, and one, a question. I was intrigued by a couple of speakers. One of them, a local business, talked about how about the businesses who are already here, and what are the plans for the villages to help them, because they are known to the community. So that is, I'm Muhammad Ilahi, Deputy Director of Economic Development with Cook County. That's a lifelong question, that how do we, help the current businesses and all that. Then there's another honorable lady talked about something really kind of struck myself in my profession for the last 35 years. In this is, Northfield has 5,000 population, and I don't know if even as smart as I personally know Joe Pulaski very well, and of course the Friedman, SB Friedman people, I don't know even if they can answer this. Why do you need to have continuous development? Where does it stop? Because she likes her town at 5,000 population and all that. So that's not for or against anything. I mean, personally, Joe would know that there isn't one TIF that I would say no to. So, but that's a personal level, because I'm an economic development professional for the county. Now the question to the village attorney is, shouldn't the public know that? I mean, I'm trying to just bring at one point that public should know that JRB are non-binding. JRB recommendations are non-binding. The village board has prerogative to take it or not take it as they want. I believe that's the Illinois statute, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct. The JRB, and I think this was covered maybe at the first meeting, and I know one of your colleagues was here, but the JRB is serving in an advisory capacity. They're making a recommendation to the village board. The vote here today doesn't necessarily mean that the TIF has failed. The board will conduct a public hearing and other meetings as well to discuss the TIF's creation, which may or may not move forward at this point. But the JRB does play an important role, and we appreciate the time and the recommendation.
Yeah, we've been in this situation before, just many times. It's good for public to know that where does JRB's responsibility lies. So.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from the board? Shannon?
So on behalf of the Winnetka Park District, our board met at the end of July to discuss this again. And as a representative of the Winnetka Park District, I am bound by the determination of our board and what their request was for this particular process. And their direction to me as that staff person that's representing the board was to oppose the approval of a TIF for the reasons of the requirements set by statute. So while there was another motion that was in regards to approve denial of that, I just wanted to make it clear that it was not in my capability to vote any other way than an abstention on that because I was not given that direction from my board. So I just wanted to make that clear for members of the public and members of the board that some of us are in a position where we have been given direction by our boards on how to relay this item. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If there are no other business before the board, I would just say in closing, I've had the privilege of working at New Trier for 21 years and working for this community. And even though we see this problem or this issue in Northfield in different ways, I am confident that we can come together to craft a path forward. And I appreciate Mr. Brennan's willingness to negotiate, talk about potential terms with an IGA for the school districts and the other bodies if the village does choose to go forward. And this is one of the rare times where there's been contention between the government bodies, but it's still rooted in respect for the residents of Northfield, our students, and our community. So just make those comments in closing. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you. Yeah.